Welcome to Leadership in Turbulent Times, today's session of the Rutgers Business School Signature Leadership Series. The Rutgers Business School Signature Leadership Series is a relatively new learning opportunity that brings you lessons of resilience, resourcefulness, responsibility, and reinvention through conversations with thought leaders and business leaders from across industry spectrums. Today's webinar is offered in valued partnership with Tech United NJ. Previously known as the Tech Council of New Jersey, Tech United NJ empowers innovators, entrepreneurs, and instigators, and we thank them for their support. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator. Mark Yaeger is the president of AEM International USA and Senior Vice President of Sales and Applications for AEM Holdings Limited. Mark has more than 30 years of experience in sales, marketing, and field operations leadership. Prior to joining AEM, Mark worked as Vice President of Global Sales at R&D Altanova, which is where he had a chance to work with and develop a long-time friendship with our presenter, making him the perfect choice to serve as moderator for today's discussion. I'd like to thank Mark Yaeger for joining us today, and I'm going to hand it off to you from here, Mark.
Thank you, Margaret, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending the Rutgers Business School Signature Leadership Series webinar today. Our topic of discussion today will be leadership in turbulent times. And quite frankly, I can't think of a more appropriate topic for 2020 than leadership in turbulent times. I'll be moderating our discussion today. And it's my pleasure to introduce to everyone our speaker, Seyed Paransun. Seyed is the CEO and president of R&D Altanova. He's regarded as a thought leader within the semiconductor electronics industry, serving both the automotive and consumer market. And he's best known for his ability to lead change and transform businesses. Prior to joining R&D Altanova, he served as the vice president of worldwide back-end operations at Atmel Corporation with responsibilities for U.S. and Asian facilities with sales of over $1.2 billion. Prior to Atmel, Seyed was the vice president and general manager of NXP Semiconductor, managing the sensors and actuators division with full responsibility for product development, marketing, R&D, and divisional P&L. He has also held senior level positions at Encore and Texas Instruments. Seyed holds a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Utah, as well as an MBA from San Jose State University. And he holds a patent on methods and apparatus for calibrating transducer devices. I have had the pleasure of working with Seyed for nearly 20 years of my career in several capacities. He has been my customer, my mentor, and my boss. But most importantly, he's a close personal friend who has always been there for me and to guide me through turbulent times. Welcome, Seyed. I will turn it over to you for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mark. With that introduction, even I am interested now in what I have to say. Thank you very much. So I have prepared a few slides to help frame our discussion today, and it will be a good segue to the rest of the webinar, which is focused on discussions and questions and answers. I hope you'll find this useful. When I think about leadership, there are a lot of different models and images that come to mind. This particular image actually made me stop and pause, because it is completely opposite of my experience of leadership. In my life, the water is never calm. And when you think about the fish, there's always a few fish that's swimming in the opposite direction, a few fish that just completely stop, and the leader is not always in the front. I'm sometimes in the back, sometimes in the middle, and sometimes completely absent, fighting sharks elsewhere. So if it is not the model of leadership, then what is? The way I think about leadership is more about the journey, understanding where you are and where you're going and how you get there. For instance, when I first joined R&D Altanova about 4 years ago, once the assessment of the company was complete, which took about a month, we spent a fair bit of time understanding and aligning in terms of where we would like to go. and aligned ourselves and got ready for the journey. Now, the journey is never a straight line. It always changes, and the circumstances changes. Sometimes even the goalpost moves. Sometimes the objective changes. So how do you stay on track? And that is where we also spend a fair bit of time evaluating and aligning ourselves on our values. How do we conduct ourselves? How do we treat each other, our customers, our suppliers? Those are the values, and those are the anchors and the North Stars, if you will, for our employees through this tumultuous journey. So what is my North Star? As a leader, my North Star at the most simple and the most basic level is service. So as I move through this process, as we move through this transformation, if at any time my actions are self-serving, they are not in the service of my employees, my customers, and my suppliers, and my investors, in that order, I pause. To me, that's a red flag. This is where I need to realign myself. And again, focus on my purpose, which is service. Now, while we go through this journey, there's a lot of discussions around what does a good leader do? What are the characteristics of a good leader? For me, authenticity is paramount. Authenticity promotes trust, and trust is the bedrock of all relationships. Candidly, I would not follow somebody I do not trust. In the spirit of authenticity, I like to also share that I know I don't have a monopoly on knowledge and IQ. So I surround myself with truth tellers. I may not like the message, but I know I have to listen. And I know this is very hard for me, but I always try to be the last person that speaks in the meetings. So listening is absolutely paramount, has been serving me well. And then naturally, the people would ask, who are the truth tellers? They are my employees. They are my most important asset. I'm sure you have heard this cliche before. The employees are my most important asset. But what I'd like to also add is skilled, aligned, motivated, and passionate employees are my most important assets. So as a leader, I make a point to always focus on that and make sure I foster that in my team and in my employees. So passion, we talked about passionate employees. Passion is, again, a tired concept in leadership. People talk about it all the time. It's absolutely important because that's the energy, that's the motion, that's the energy that creates motion in individuals and in companies. What I'd like to also add in my style of leadership is a healthy dose of compassion. Once my employees know and they feel I can relate to them, that is extremely motivating for them. In turn, that turns them into passionate individuals about their job, about their purpose. Now, passion is not only as the soft side of my business. I also bring it to the hard stuff, relating to my employees during detailed technical discussions, relating to them at the technical level, and then working with them and transitioning to higher levels of abstraction so we can deploy these ideas to other businesses or other technologies. Case in point, in our business, working with my technology team and moving through these levels of abstraction, zooming in and zooming out, looking for leverage points, we were able to translate a lot of the ideas and innovation that was deployed in silicon space into the PCB space. And this has worked really well for us, both in terms of market share and profitability. These are all good ideas. They sound really good, particularly when times are good. The natural question is, what do you do when times are hard, when things change? And let me tell you, they always do. This is one constant in our life. I never forget, I was in Shanghai working on a very large M&A deal. I was in my hotel room on the phone with a legal team in U.S. trying to finalize the deal to be presented tomorrow in China, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. All of a sudden, I hear on the other side of the phone, Seyed, I think we're under attack. Turn the TV on. I gotta hang up. The line goes dead. I turn the TV on, and the towers are on fire. That was September 11th. Few years later, but we survived it. We managed it, we survived it. Few years later, I was building this giant factory in Taiwan. Factory ready, investment made, CapEx in place. SARS breaks out. We have a lot of factories, but no workers. Again, another difficult time that we lived through and we survived. Another incident I'd like to highlight is when I was running a sensors division. We were the largest supplier of airbag sensors in the world. Our supply chain was built around the fab in Japan, in the city of Sendai. After Sendai earthquake and Sendai tsunami, our fab fell into the ocean. In 24 hours, our supply chain was completely broken. Providing to automotive industry is particularly difficult. When you don't have a supply, it is an impossible task. Rest assured, we managed it, we survived it, and our business continued. And now we are dealing with COVID. COVID is inherently very difficult, and we have had a very difficult year this year. I never forget, I was in my office, the head of my HR walks in and says, Seyed, we are running out of masks, we are running out of disinfectants, there's nothing we can buy. We were posed with a question. So what do I do? Do I send everybody home, furlough everybody, stop their livelihood? Do I continue to work and put my employees in danger? In 24 hours, we had our chemists in the lab making disinfectants. We had people dispatched to Walmart. We bought all the bed sheets we could find. We hired seamsters, turned the conference rooms into mask making factories. We were making masks for hundreds of our employees. The point is, challenges are always present, and we have to find ways to overcome them and to survive them. Now, was I afraid when COVID happened? Absolutely. Was it difficult? Absolutely. Was I frazzled? No, because I had seen 9/11, I had seen Sendai, I had seen SARS. I knew in my heart of hearts, we will overcome that. The message to the young folks in the audience, that may be one of the reasons you want to keep some of our gray-haired guys around, because we have seen the past. We have a sense about it. Now, what is unique about these events? What is unique is when a turbulent event takes place, there's a lot of fear. There's uncertainty of the future. There's doubt in people's minds. People get very much concerned. It gets very personal fast. So when I'm faced with these circumstances, usually what I do is a little bit counterintuitive. The first thing I do is I pause. So in case of COVID, I pause, trying to assess the situation. I have learned over the years to really see it like it is and not worse than it is. If you see it a lot worse than it is, that freezes you up. It stops me from action. So I assess what it is, and then I make a point to be at ground zero all the time till we get better. Since COVID happened, I've been coming to work every day. I've been walking the factory floors every day. Here in New Jersey, up in Pennsylvania, I've been on the phone with my team all over the world, Zooming all the time. It's important for my team to know I relate to their pain, I relate to their fear, and I'm here for them, and we will survive. And we always anchor our actions in our values. This is one thing that stays as constant in the equation. So safety is paramount. How do we make sure our employees are safe? Livelihood of our employees are paramount. So we continually focus on those. And one of the things I've learned over the years is during difficult times, leaders will emerge. People will move up, they raise the occasion, and they help. And it's important to reward them, recognize them. In the middle of COVID, when we had uncertainty of business, and we were not even sure if we can keep the doors open, I worked vehemently with my investors to make sure we provide bonuses and salary increases to my team. And I tell you, I'm a really good sales guy. Mark will attest to that, but it was an easy sell. It was difficult, but we overcame that. And we were able to provide for our people, take care of our customers, and our business prospered. Now, these memories of difficult times may be fading, but there's one memory I'd like to share that's very clear and present in my mind. And this is what keeps me going and I lean on during my difficult time. Specific to Sendai, I had a director that was managing our customer interface and the business for me. Every day he would go to customer meetings and explain our situation, provide a path forward. And it was a difficult meeting every time. Every time he would come out bruised and he would travel all over the world, visit customers. And this went on for some time. And it took us about 9 months to really get back on track and take care of our customers and reinvigorate the business. And right now that individual actually is running that business. So what gives me hope and keeps me going through difficult times is our audacity to overcome obstacles. And this reminds me of the pillars of leadership at Rutgers Business School. One pillar that is clear and I rely on all the time, and I like to leave you with, is resilience. That's one constant in the equation of leadership. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Seyed, for the opening remarks, and certainly, as we both can attest in our careers, we've had some, to steal a baseball analogy, some curveballs thrown at us outside of just normal business operations. Before we talk about some of those and how you worked your way through it in a little bit more detail, maybe we can take a step back and take a look at your personal journey as well. We've got sure we have a very varied audience attending today and listening, and sure we've got lots of the younger generation who's just starting their careers, right? And I was wondering if you could share with everybody a little bit. Even though you act like it, you didn't start out as a CEO. You started out as an individual contributor out of college and then worked your way up. And so I was wondering what kind of advice you could share with people who were developing their career path today, and what are some of the things they can be doing to become the next generation of leaders?
That's a great question. Lee, I'm glad you brought that up. For me, the people I promote in my organization are the folks that always do more than what they're asked of to do. It's all about value creation. One practical advice: do as much as you can to help your boss. Take stuff off his plate. If you work for somebody, do that. If you're an entrepreneur, do more for your customer. Make it easier for your customer. When you create value, that value is going to be recognized. My team, if you guys are listening, the guys who are doing more than what we are asking you to do are the ones who will be promoted.
The other thing that, and I know you and I have spent time talking about in the past, right? And the coaching aspect or the mentors, right? Go back to the days when you were my customer and helping me through scenarios of selling the products into the industry. How important is it to have mentors and leaders and guidance from industry leaders and other people around you in order to mold your career as being a thought leader?
The way I think about it is when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And more important than actually having mentors is being humble and seeking to learn. And over the years, I've been blessed. I've had great bosses. I've had not so good bosses. And candidly, I've learned from both because I look for opportunities to mimic or to learn. Actually, I have learned a lot from my employees. The example I cited about Sendai, I learned tremendously from that employee. I learned a lot from my customers. I try to stay in close communication with them. They are the people who are actually learning and understanding the application of the product. So I would say it's absolutely paramount that we stand on the shoulders of people behind us, around us, and learn from them. So be coachable is my first guidance. I also, even now, over the years, I've built a network of folks that I've been working with, senior managers, other leaders. I continuously lean on them to get ideas. For instance, when I was in Shanghai talking to the private equity firm for a major expansion plan for our business, and the day of my meeting, the trade war was announced and the entity list was listed, and then the whole business fell apart. So naturally, I lean on folks. I call my other CEO buddies. How are you guys dealing with this? How are you managing your business? We brainstorm. And they learn from me, I learn from them, and then we glean ideas that we can apply to our individual business model. So having people that you can work with, bounce ideas off, brainstorm with, is really a big deal. And I guess it talks to humility of a leader, to understand that he or she doesn't have to do it alone. We can always connect with in our networks and brainstorm on ideas.
So yeah, I think that's great advice, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know everything, right? And so being able to have a strong network of industry leaders that you can leverage off of to gain ideas to work through difficult times is certainly very powerful. So I want to move on to something. One of the things that you and I have been very, very fortunate with over the years is strong international operations experience, right? Being able to work and live in other countries, manufacturing organizations in multiple countries, and certainly at R&D Altanova, you've got a very diverse group of people, both domestically and internationally. So you made the comment earlier, change is always constant. Change is going to happen on a regular basis. What advice or what could you share with people of how to get different cultures, different types of people, from individual contributors up to executives, to leverage around and bond together for managing the change that happens? It takes a real strong leader to be able to pull a diverse group together to march down a single path.
Indeed. We are in 7 different geographies, and geographical diversity is a strength. It allows us to have 24/7 service for our customers. We can leverage labor force, leverage new ideas. So it really is a huge benefit to the business. But along with the benefits, it brings a lot of complexity. Over the years, my approach to dealing with diverse cultures is I can reduce it to one word, and that is respect. To respect other cultures, that they also have a good understanding of human relations, a good understanding of their environment, and being able to relate to them at their level promotes a bond and a relationship that has served me well. I made a point to visit all my sites globally. It's not an easy task, and it makes a difference when you're relating to your team on their ground, in their environment, in their cafeterias, and bounce ideas. So I would say respect is number 1. Number 2 is to align on purpose. We may have different ideas how to finalize a product and how to introduce it to the market, but as long as we are aligned around the purpose, how we get there, their style of management has to be left alone. I was, one of the factories I had over the years ago was in Philippines. Very poor performing factory. everybody was up in arms that it is not performing well. We should shut it down. I spent a fair bit of time understanding the factory folks, and I decided, and the common wisdom at the time was to always run those factories with an expat, somebody from outside coming in, telling everybody how to do it. I figured it's best to have a Filipino running that factory. So I found the best person I could, and I supported him to grow, and it became an awesome factory, world class, actually create a lot of value. So it's just a lot of hard work, but respect and relating and supporting them to grow.
You know, along those lines, right? As we talk about the international aspect of our businesses and the cultural differences, right? You know, you and I again both believe in you know, face-to-face interactions as much as possible. We have a question actually was very appropriate at this time from the audience, which is, you know, how has the new, you know, the new model of working remotely impacted your leadership style, and has it had an impact on the business?
You know, it's a great question. It has, in terms of our ability to connect. For instance, I used to have communication meetings every quarter globally. We would have 2 time zones, and everybody globally would dial in, and we would have a communication meeting, a lot of questions and answers. And with COVID, I broke it up. I do now communication meeting with individual geographies, and I allow ample time for questions and answers, because again, during difficult times, there's a lot of value in being able to relate and connect. So we have actually amped up the amount of time I'm spending with individual groups in the individual geographies. We have leveraged Zoom and TeamView for a lot of informal communication to make sure that time that we used to spend with each other around the water cooler, that we would have informal dialogue. We have moved that to a Zoom environment. Now, particularly for our business, we have been around 52 years. We have deep relationships with our customers. So because we have a lot of already existing relationship, it hasn't impacted our revenue and it hasn't impacted our growth. What it has impacted is our ability to break into new customers. Because when you have a new relationship, you need that human touch and the connection. Then you can leverage that to a Zoom and a phone call. So I would say for an existing business, we have been fortunate. Actually, this year our business grew. We didn't fire anybody. We actually hired a whole bunch of folk. We gave salary increases. It has been good for us, but it would have been better if we had the luxury of face-to-face communication for new business. I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, I think we all are. Have you found that you're doing more video calls than you might have done in the past, as opposed to just straight conference calls?
Yes, indeed. We were leaning more on voice conferences before. With COVID, you know, we're actually even when I call my next door office, because we are trying to observe social distancing, I use a video, because there's an element of seeing a person and reading the body language that adds additional context and color to the communication. So I try to leverage that. You know, sometimes the guys I get on the other side, they don't look pretty. You know, they have a 5 o'clock shadow or they have a t-shirt, and that's perfectly okay, because we respect that. This is Zoom time.
Exactly. So one of the things you pointed out earlier in your opening remarks, you talked about praising accomplishment, and certainly, you know, again, being on your staff for several years, I certainly saw that, and that's a key component to any successful organization is breeding success, and success begats success. What about failures? How do you feel, as a leader for an organization, how do you guide people through the process of failure, and is that okay in rewarding or not rewarding, but pointing out failures through the process?
That's a great question, especially for a young audience. It took me a while to internalize that, but failure is part of life. It's part of the equation. And, I have failures every day. So, and I think it's okay. Sometimes failures are completely outside our control, right? Sendai happens, COVID happens, 9/11 happens, and then we just deal with that. Sometimes failure is part of the process, for instance, and that kind of relates to your appetite for risk. For instance, in my organization, when we do product development, we are a very innovative high-tech company. We're continuously breaking the boundaries, taking chances, taking risks. Failure is a big piece of that. And we have to fail and fail and fail till we understand the process window, we understand the capabilities, we know where the brakes are, we know where the cliffs are, and that's perfectly acceptable. And we embrace that. So we have a big risk, we have a big appetite for risk in that space. On the manufacturing side, because we have metrics such as on-time delivery, quality, customer commits, our appetite for risk is diminished. I mean, we still take risks and we still allow for failure, but it's a different scale of failure. So I think the message I like to leave you with is, it is part of life. Like, for instance, I was in Pennsylvania the other day, touring one of my factories, and my factory manager told was, with disappointment, he said, this project, we have the boards and they're failing again. And my natural reaction was, that's okay. That's why they call it research and development. So very key point to embrace that and allow the team, give your team wings to fly.
That's great. I think it's extremely important to, it goes back to what you also said earlier around trust, right? And trust in the leadership of the organization that failure is not the end game, right? You have to fail along the way to the path to success. So now we talk about some of the turbulent times, and you addressed earlier several of the things that affected the high-tech industry over the years, right? And everything from 9/11 to Sendai to SARS and now eventually to COVID. So thinking at the COVID level, right? One of the challenges that I think companies face today with respect to COVID is that, of course, it has a potential impact on the business, right? And your ability to deliver on your commitments to your customer. But it's an enormous personal impact as well, for individuals, for families. As a CEO, as a leader, how do you bridge that gap? How do you square off those corners with respect to having compassion and empathy for the individuals, but at the same time having to run a business and meet the commitments of your shareholders, your customers?
Yeah, it's, they say being a CEO is a lonely job, and sometimes it is, because you have to make those decisions. Just like any other enterprise, any other company, I have boundary conditions, I have affordability issues, I have budgets that I have to hold to. So my job is to manage that. That's my fiduciary responsibility to my investors. I also feel a personal responsibility to my employees in terms of their safety. So specific to COVID, I actually subordinated all to my employee safety. So immediately we sent everybody who could work from home to work from home. Immediately we implemented cleaning procedures, personal safety equipment, disinfectants. I invested a lot of money in revamping the factory's filtering system, installed UV lights in air exchangers, way beyond what CDC guidelines told us to do. And I thought it was important because, again, being true to our values, safety is our #1 value in our value structure of the company. And it did cost us significant money. For instance, at the beginning of COVID, to get quick results on testing, it would cost us up to $150 per test. And when you have hundreds of employees that you're testing, the cost adds up fast. So it did indeed cost us money. And but I'm happy to announce it really served us well as well. We kept the factory running every day. Our contact tracing proved that nobody in the factory actually contracted the disease because we were really diligent about that. And our business grew. During COVID, we actually grew, our profitability grew. We gave raises, we hired people. So in this specific case, I think making that decision to subordinate all to our employee safety really paid off. And I'm really happy that the results were positive.
Well, that's fantastic. It certainly is a unique time. I mean, SARS was another one of those, and many years ago, of course, right? And I think a lot of protocols that certainly the Asian business put in place, we're learning from here in the U.S. now today with respect to how to manage it. So we got a couple of questions from the audience, and I thought I would throw these out there. I kind of like a couple of these, right? So here's one which I actually think is quite good. Is the question is the leader bigger than the organization, or does the organization have room for star performers?
You know, that's a great question. I can speak for myself, my journey. Again, I hold leadership as a position of service. My job is to be a service to my employees, to my customers, to my investors. And rest assured, there's always room for more people to step into that space and provide service. But what I can guarantee you, you can call 10 CEOs and you would ask them, and every 10 of them would love to have more star performers, more leaders to support them, to help them. And so there's plenty room for folks who are willing to step up and rise to the occasion and help to move the organization forward. And I certainly welcome that. And I think it's a great opportunity for folks to step up, particularly when I think about my life, and I think about what's in front of me in this business. The challenges are immense. I mean, my life gets complicated by day because of all the changes that's coming down the pike, changes in technology, environment, all the challenges that we face with as a species. So we certainly need a lot more folk, a lot more leaders, men and women who are willing to step up and try to solve some of these issues that's in front of us. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you talked about it earlier as well, right? At the end of the day, you want to be able to surround yourself with thought leaders and star performers. It only will expand your horizon as well and lift the entire organization. And considering the fact that I was one of your star performers, that I agree with that motto 100%. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Another good question from the audience. How do you measure the effectiveness of your leadership?
Great question. I'm open to ideas. Few things I do. I'm a very strong believer of KPIs. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. So that's one of the first things we put in place in R&D Altanova. We measure everything. So the way to think about the way I measure myself, first and foremost, is the numbers. Is the revenue growing? Is the quality good? Is the profitability good? Are you expanding? And none of those would happen if you do not have a strong employee base. None of these that I mentioned in terms of numbers are realized unless you have good retention, highly qualified employees, motivated employees, outstanding sales, outstanding customer service. So those are the few things I look at, and I look at it on a weekly basis. In my staff meeting, first thing we look at is the safety of the factories. The second thing we look at is the quality of our production. Then we look at our output. So those are the metrics that I measure myself. And I think those are the beginning. Those are the table stakes, if you will, of measuring a good leader.
Another question from the audience. How does sustainability and philanthropy play a role in your function as a leader?
So I'm sorry, I had a bad connection. What's the question again?
How does sustainability and philanthropy play a role in your function as a leader?
So sustainability is paramount. We actually, if you go to our website, we have our values, and environmental stewardship is one of our values. So we are very careful about being good corporate citizens and do a lot of recycling. And we're very careful about the chemistries and the chemicals we use and what we return back to the environment. So that's a very big deal, part of our organization, and we have very strict standards. So we focus on that. And it's not just because we are good folk, but I think it's good business. It is good for the business to be environmentally conscious and be sustainable, because we are. I was just reading the other day. There's about 10 billion ants on the planet Earth, and 7 billion people. Soon there will be more people than ants. So it is my job and everybody else's job that's in the position of leadership to make sure our growth is sustainable. So we pass the planet to the younger generation that benefits them and serves them, as opposed to passing a problem to them. So that's a big deal. Now, philanthropy is, to me, it's a personal mission, because I come from very humble means. A lot of people have to make sacrifices for me to be here. So in turn, I feel it's part of my duty to give back. So I don't have a philanthropy in the organization, but personally, I take pride in that. I think it's important for me to give back, both in terms of financial as well as my time. And I think this is a personal journey for me. I don't advocate it, but it serves me.
Okay. I like this question because it's dear to our hearts with respect to the businesses that we're in the high tech world. But what are some of the new technologies that you have used, or that you think you will be using to go forward to lead your business, right? Whether it be virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning. How do you think those are going to impact your business, but also your leadership skills and style?
That's, we are in technology business. So our business is actually moving very rapidly, and we are the recipient of the benefits of high tech as well. So one area that is that's going to have a material impact on our business is machine learning. We design very, very sophisticated PCB boards. And sometimes these PCB boards may have maybe hundreds of thousands of traces and pads. And the layout is very complex because it has to support very high frequency signals. And for that, we rely on very highly skilled engineers. One of the things we are thinking about is, how do we use machine learning to facilitate this design process and leverage that so we can deploy our engineers to even more difficult, more sophisticated work and pass some of that design work to machine learning. We are at the very early stages. It looks really promising. So that's an area that we are thinking about. In addition to that, we are always looking at advances in chemistry and imaging to go to finer lines and finer pitches for higher speed boards. We have a lot of focus on developing solutions for the 5G market, and most importantly, cost-effective solutions, so we can make this ubiquitous and really make it available to the public.
So you also touched on something that, of course, in my role of sales is near and dear to my heart, right? Relative to the conditions of the business today, and being able to sustain current customers, but then trying to gain new customers. And so a question that we got is, what recommendations would you have for a new business trying to gain new customers in today's world? It's a real challenge that we face, considering that the face-to-face and elbow-to-elbow interaction is not like it used to be.
I agree. Breaking into new customers is a challenge, and the market is quite crowded. That's where the difficulty is, and to be able to get face time and be able to get recognition for your solution is not an easy task. We are lucky because, like I said, we have a pretty long history. But what I have started earlier this year, because candidly, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we didn't know when COVID is going to end. We started focusing on avenues we can use in view of these limitations to break into new customers. So we started looking at maybe publications and social media to reach out and to really showcase the new technology and the new innovation we have brought forth, and really lean on that venue to open up and try to get more mind share and more audience. I think it's a difficult task. And what I would say is, years past, one of my heroes was Jack, and his focus was always to be the best, to really differentiate and set yourself away outside the crowded space and create that sense of uniqueness. And this is what we focus on. We try to figure out where we can differentiate and have a big enough gap between us and other solutions that will attract the customer's attention. Because the transition from one supplier to another supplier is inherently difficult and risky, and the value has to warrant that change. And we try to focus on that, to create value, to create a differentiation that warrants the risk.
Good. So we're getting some great questions. I hope I get this one right, because I really like this one, and so I hope I capture the essence of the question here. And again, thinking of COVID-19 and thinking of the challenges of the work environment that we have today, and having to use the digital environment more than we have before. And the question I think comes is what challenges does that put in front of your employees to evolve into a leadership role, right? Clearly, I know that you have always stressed to your employees to strive for more and to move into a position of leadership. So how does the world today change or make it more difficult for people to step into that role when we're living almost in a virtual environment on a regular basis?
Great question. I struggle with that because when I think about my past, how I moved up in the organization, a lot of that was face-to-face discussions. A lot of that was networking, building a relationship, bouncing ideas. It is somewhat difficult to open up and have a heart-to-heart discussion on a Zoom meeting or on the phone, but face-to-face makes it a little bit easier. So the ability of our team to establish themselves as colleagues, as confidants, as mid-level managers has been limited because, again, they have been relegated to their home offices and Zoom. So this is something that I'm actually cognizant of. And we, as leaders, as in my job, as things open up, we have to really reinvigorate that to allow our team to reestablish and again give them paths to grow. Now, what we can do though is because my mindset is always about, okay, here's a problem. What can you do to help yourself? What I do to help myself is I have one-on-one Zoom calls. Even though, I mean, Zoom calls are great, they're very efficient, but have one-on-one Zoom calls, like one-on-one. So create that sense of intimacy so you can build a relationship. I think that goes a long ways. That would really help to lay the foundation. So as we transition to the next phase of COVID with vaccine and inoculation, we can hit the ground running.
So you've been a senior leader for years, and certainly now in the CEO role for over 3 years at R&D Altanova. So I'm assuming that on a regular basis, you run across difficult decisions that you have to make and the things that you encounter. And so the question here is, can you share the most difficult decision or reoccurring decision that you encounter in your leadership role?
Well, the list is long. Let me answer that question two ways. First is difficult decisions that were difficult a year ago, they're not difficult anymore. Difficult decisions that were difficult 10 years ago, they're not difficult anymore. So as you grow and as I learn more tricks and as I have more intuition and more wisdom, it becomes easier and easier. But rest assured, every day we have a challenge. And these are decisions that I actually have to pause and think about and do a lot of introspection in terms of what is the right way to go. Because my decisions don't just impact me, they impact the livelihood of a lot of individuals. So I have to keep that in consideration. So one of the most pressing decisions I had to make recently is around COVID, is around how do we manage to keep our employees safe while we support their livelihood and support our customers. And we have guidelines from CDC in terms of if somebody has some symptoms, you do contact tracing, you quarantine. And it was difficult, but I did make a decision that I will go way beyond what CDC says, and I would do continuous testing. And it costs us money, it costs us time for our employees. It is not the most efficient way to do this, maybe, but I think it is the best way I know how to keep my team safe while we have maintained their livelihood and we take care of our business.
So along those same lines, and we're getting close to the top of the hour, so this will be our last question. Thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. They were fantastic. So a lot of comments being made about the significant investment that you made as the CEO for the safety of your employees, and congratulations for that, right? The question comes down to is how did you communicate and gain support for that strategy from your board of directors and shareholders? And then also, how did you communicate proactively to your employees the actions that you were taking?
So the board of directors, actually, I'm very fortunate. They were very supportive. So again, it really boils down to trust. Over the years, I've established trust with them, so they know I will do the right thing for the business and for my employees. Now, specifically communicating to my employees, a lot of my employees have emails, so I have broadcast emails. A lot of my employees do not have email, so I have WhatsApp accounts. So I provide the routine communication to them through WhatsApp, and they can echo back to me, so I have direct line of communication with them. And it just doesn't limit to my employees. I have also, when COVID occurred, I set up a cadence of direct communication and email broadcast to all my customers in terms of steps we're taking to ease the fear of what is going to happen to them, what's going to happen to the product, and give them confidence that there's somebody here, there's a team here that's going to watch out for them, take care of them, and help them transition to the next stage. So communication is actually paramount because it inspires confidence in them. And like I said, I have Zoom, I have email broadcasts, and for my employees that don't have access to email, we have WhatsApp. So those are the avenues we try.
Well, and I've always admired that about you, Seyed, with respect to your ability to communicate with your people, and not just to hide out in the corner office, right? You're very interactive on a daily basis with with the organization, whether that be through communication on the phone or through Zoom or walking the factory as well. So I think that's a huge piece of it. For those that I didn't get a chance to get to your questions, I sincerely apologize. There were a lot of great questions and I wanted to be able to step through them. We're getting towards the top of the hour, and Margaret, I think I was supposed to give you the handoff to do some final housekeeping at this point.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. What a great discussion you led, and Seyed, thank you for all of that you shared about your leadership journey. You gave us some, excellent examples, to live by, and some inspiration, I would definitely say, from my perspective. We did get more questions than we had time for, and I'll share those with you. So perhaps we can figure out a different way, maybe a quick blog or something to address those. But I thank our audience for their enthusiastic participation. It was fantastic today. And as we close, I just want to provide a friendly reminder to everyone that the RBS Signature Leadership Series takes place on Thursdays at noon Eastern. For 2021, we'll be trying to stick with second Thursdays. For more information, you can always visit our webpage, business.rutgers.edu/alumni/lifelong-learning. I know it's long. We'll email it to those we have email addresses for. Our very next Signature Leadership Series will feature Rutgers' own Christopher Malloy, Chancellor of the New Brunswick campus. I'm looking forward to that one, and I hope you are too.
I also like to thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Mark, for helping me through this process. And I also like to thank Rutgers Business School and the audience for giving me their listening. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. I know that people are going to really benefit from what you've shared. So I'll just also let everyone know that we have been recording, and we will let you. We will get that to you either via social media or via email, and you can always check the Business Insights page of our website as well for that. When we close, you'll see a very brief survey about today's event. One of them is a free-form field to type in topics and or speakers you'd like to see featured in our future webinars. I want to thank everyone and wish you a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.